We're here at the home of science journalist Gary Taubes, who's known for challenging the conventional wisdom on what we should and should not eat. Gary got his start in journalism as a staff writer for Discover magazine. He's written 4 books, including the bestsellers Good Calories, Bad Calories, and Why We Get Fat. This past April, in a cover story for the New York Times magazine, Gary took a close look at the science linking sugar to diseases like obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. In the upcoming issue of Mother Jones, Gary and his co-author Kristen Cousins used internal documents to show how the sugar industry defends itself against claims that sugar is unhealthy. Gary's next book will be about sugar, which is today's topic. Now, in the Mother Jones piece, you and Kristen write that evidence linking sugar to chronic diseases has been around since at least the early 60s. But scientists still haven't nailed this down. How much of this delay in research would you attribute to the sugar industry?
I had always suspected that there was sugar industry influence. It was hard to imagine that there wasn't. And here Kristen had found these documents, basically internal sugar industry documents, demonstrating that this was a very conscious effort by the sugar industry to sort of make sure that nobody ever no researchers ever came to a consensus that sugar was as bad as it might be.
So what did these documents consist of?
You know, a lot of internal newsletters, speeches given by various sugar people, letters to and from sugar associations, scientists, administrators, funding documents, money they were spending, annual reports.
What stood out for you as sort of the most egregious thing that the sugar industry did in these documents?
You know, I don't know how much they believed that. They just didn't believe the evidence. They got legitimate researchers, established researchers to come in and say, hey, this evidence is full of holes. And it was full of holes. The evidence against fat was also full of holes. What they didn't do was say, let's nail it down.
Let's fill the holes.
Let's fill the holes. What they did instead was say, let's make sure these holes never get filled.
Now, some of the, there were a number of scientists, fairly high-level scientists, who were getting support from the sugar industry. Why were their studies any less valuable than the ones that implicate sugar? None
of this research was actually answering this question that other researchers had said they had to answer. Their own consultants had said, which is sugar causing diabetes?
So it was perfectly valid work, but it asked the wrong questions? Is that what we're saying?
I mean, I would, perfectly valid is a kind way to do it. It was kind of my trivial, meaningless research that generated papers for a graduate student or maybe a PhD, a thesis.
So back in the late 90s, Americans were eating a record 90 pounds of sugar per person per year. But we've been eating less sugar ever since then. We were down to 77 pounds last year per person. Why are we not then seeing a decline in some of these chronic diseases if we're eating less sugar?
Imagine we were all smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And so the similar question would have been in 1999, we were smoking 20 cigarettes a day per capita, and today in 2010, we're smoking 16 cigarettes per day per capita. Why is it there hasn't been a decrease in lung cancer? The assumption is there's some linear one-to-one correspondence. Right. The one point I make in my books and my writing is diabetes rates seem to increase dramatically post-Civil War in America with the Industrial Revolution. This coincided with the creation of the confectionery industry, the soft drink industry, and a huge increase in sugar consumption. And suddenly, beginning in the late 1970s, with the introduction of high fructose corn syrup and this idea that a healthy diet is a low-fat, high-carb diet, sugar consumption goes up again. And lo and behold, obesity and diabetes rates go up.
So Nestle and General Mills announced this month that they would cut back sugar in children's cereals by up to 30% by 2015. Does that give you hope?
I mean, it's a start. It's a start. There's a lot of activity lately. I actually get optimistic on the sugar front. It's not that hard to convince people that sugar is bad for them. And there's a lot of activity now. There's a vote coming up in Richmond, 5 miles from here, and in 3 weeks. There's the Bloomberg's initiative in New York. I think these companies are going to realize that they can sell more products if they reduce the sugar. How low it'll go and whether it will go low enough will be interesting. I think more and more you go into the doctor's office and nobody considers sugar and high fructose corn syrup part of a healthy diet. Might be, but nobody considers it anymore.